Right, we've no napping because we've got a really exciting conversation. This is Resisting a Surveillance State, Racism, Warfare, and Economic Injustice Powered by AI Without Ethics. And we're gonna, simmer down. And this has been organized by the Pax Christi Young Adult Caucus. And so I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Sister Annie Killian, and I'm a member of the National Council, also part of PCAYAC, and I'm going to turn it over now to one of our PCAYAC leaders, Jessica Suck.
All right, well, I'm so happy we're all here today. I'm so excited to hear from our all-star lineup of speakers. So, as you'll know, the use of artificial intelligence and AI is proliferating. It has become a well-known marketing term, as tech CEOs, high-profile engineers, and politicians have used prophecy as advocacy for decades, funneling untold wealth into the hands of the few. When powerful interests frame new applications of AI as inevitable, magical, and something to be adapted without the possibility of rectification, great damage occurs. Government officials, law enforcement agencies, armies, landlords, and employers often hide when they use AI to make decisions about healthcare, employment, public benefits, housing, police investigations, and targeting in war. In this session, 3 expert speakers will expound upon how AI is already being used to fuel economic injustice, conflate security and surveillance with safety, destroy democratic governmental decision-making, and commit flagrant violations of human rights and laws of war, as we are witnessing in Palestine and Gaza today. The speaker presentations will be recorded and will be followed by an unrecorded panel Q&A with the audience, so save your questions until the end. It is my honor to introduce our first speaker, Tawana Petty. Tawana Petty, known by stage name Honeycomb, is a mother, facilitator, social justice organizer, poet, and author. She is the founding executive director of Pettypropolis, Inc., an artist incubator, which teaches poetry, policy literacy, and advocacy and data and digital privacy education. Petty also serves on the CS for Detroit Steering Committee. She is a 2023 to 2025 Just Tech Fellow with the Rockwood Leadership Institute, an alumni fellow of the Digital Civil Society Lab at the Stanford Center on Philanthropy and Civil Society, the Detroit Equity Action Lab, and the Art Matters Foundation. Petty has been honored with numerous awards. Selected honors include a Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition and Wayne State University's Center for Peace and Conflict Studies Peacemaker Award in 2018. In 2021, she was named one of 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics. In 2023, Petty was honored with the AI Policy Leader in Civil Society Award by the Center for AI and Digital Policy, the Ava Ho Silent Shero Award by the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion, and with a Racial Justice Leadership Award by the Detroit People's Platform. In 2024, she was named on Business Insider's AI Power List for Policy and Ethics. So with that, please join me in a warm welcome for Petty.
I promise y'all, that's the most embarrassing part. Just say, no, don't say anymore. Welcome to Detroit. I'm a lifelong Detroiter. In Detroit, we say, what up, though? I say, what up, though? All right, now you've been deputized. You can say that wherever you want. And so I am a poet. And so I'd like to start this off with just a little short poem to welcome you all to Detroit and give you an idea about what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to jump right into AI. I'm going to take you on a journey to how Detroit became what they want to consider the next Silicon Valley. We were supposed to turn our backs on you, count down to your imminent demise, dangle you by the limbs of misdeeds. They wanted us to rate you inferior. Plagued by deteriorating neighborhoods and a convoluted history, you were never supposed to bloom from your ashes. A lot like you have been discarded like debris, deemed useless to naysayers and convictors. Yet you keep rising, clinging to vitality. You refuse to allow statistics to dictate your destiny, and the media will channel your journey. And though some shall remain loyal, others will mock your tribulations. You were combing a young into maturity. Both your gift and your curse, imported from adversity. You've seen better decades, yet you thrived during the worst of them. Your best days have yet to arrive, and though some won't stick around to witness your climb or rejoice in your restoration, your destination is inevitable. You've been on the bottom much longer than most, and the bridges your journey won't be easy to coast, but you will make it and bring warriors with you, armed with devotion. They will defend your dignity and honor your namesake. You are Detroit, the road to progression, the mirror image of endurance, and you hold the key to taking back our democracy. So I have a lot of slides, and the Zoom world, I went into it against my will, but I'm here now. And so I'm going to take you on a journey of Detroit, what inspired that poem, right? So you may or may not be familiar with this quote by the late, great Ida B. Wells, when she said, somebody must show that the Afro-American race is more sinned against than sinning, and it seems to have fallen upon me to do so. I've internalized that. I've internalized that since I was 7 years old and found out I was a poet. And so my entire life, Detroit has been a predominantly Black city. It hovers around somewhere around 80% now, but it was 90+% growing up. And as you can imagine, a lot comes with growing up in a predominantly Black city, right? Dominant, pervasive narratives, human cognitive biases and impacts. And so I'm going to take you on a little journey of what it feels like to grow up in a city where the pervasive narrative for more than a half century has been a particular way, and the impacts that has that leads us now to the panoptic city or surveillance surround city that we now live in. So dominant narratives, they define the way you think, how we see ourselves, how we see other people, what policies are enacted, which neighborhoods are invested in or disinvested in, and how we apply or do not apply our critical thinking on subjects. And you all should know, possibly now, in the age of AI, your critical thinking is under attack. Like the ability to make decisions on behalf of yourself and think things through is being defined for you right now. And so in 1977, I was born in 1976. So for my entire life, there's been this pervasive dominant narrative. It's been through music, it's been through movies, it's been through news articles, any type of medium you could think of. And so in 1977, there was a film called The Kentucky Fried Movie. And one of the clips from the Kentucky Fried Movie was Take Him to Detroit. And so it was called A Fistful of Yen. And so what happened was there was like this overlord, and he was punishing people for crimes committed against him. And the worst possible crime you could experience was to be taken to Detroit. And so he has someone being drugged out, kicking and screaming, and they're saying anything but Detroit. And so that was the worst punishment that you could experience. In 2007, Cade Benfield wrote an article, "Is it time to change the narrative about Detroit?" And so where he said, what Cade said was, the standard narrative of Detroit has been about a bankrupt, vacant, decaying, post-industrial wasteland, an environmental, social, and economic disaster. Detroit has been a quintessential shrinking city, the poster child for everything that has gone wrong with the post-industrial Midwest. Now, I want you to imagine being a child coming up and growing up in these types of narratives that are consistently being beat against your psyche. 2009, a comedian in Cleveland did a tourism video. You may remember this. And he goes through all of the similar challenges that Cleveland experienced through poverty, disinvestment, etc. But he capped off his video with, "At least we're not Detroit." So, rather than have a mentality that we're suffering some of the same economic disinvestment and disparities, it was like, hey, all that aside, we're not Detroit. 2009, Time magazine did a cover that says "The Tragedy of Detroit, How a Great City Fell and How It Can Rise Again." Cover of Time, right? So I went from 1977, I'm now in 2009. 2013, economic investment. Folks want to come back to the city, right? They have the blank slate narrative where Detroit is coming back. Now, I don't know where you all politically lean, but anytime I hear Detroit is coming back, I hear "Make America Great Again." So tough, cheap, and real, Detroit is cool again, right? So think about that. It's saying like those folks that have been there, they don't really matter. We're interested in the city now. And so now it's a cool place. So we're going to bring all our resources and things to the city now. 2013. 2014, Drop Dead Detroit. This was about the late L. Brooks Patterson, who was the Oakland County executive, a suburban community outside of Detroit. He wielded a lot of political power, transit power, investment power, and he did it for all the decades he was in office. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about what he said. He said, "Anytime I talk about Detroit, it will not be positive. Therefore, I'm called a Detroit basher. The truth hurts. I used to say to my kids, first of all, there's no reason to go to Detroit. We've got restaurants out here. They don't even have movie theaters in Detroit, not one," which wasn't true, by the way. He went on to say, "I can't imagine finding something in Detroit that we don't have in spades here. Except live sports. We don't have baseball, football. For that, fine. Get in and get out." When asked how he might fix the financial problem, he said, "I made a prediction a long time ago, and it's come to pass. What we're going to do is turn Detroit into an Indian reservation where we herd all the Indians into the city, build a fence around it, and then throw in the blankets and corn." So this is an Oakland County executive. This isn't just, someone with racial bias, and which is horrible enough. This is someone with political and financial power. And I'm sorry, something happened with the conversion and emailing over my documents. So there's a little bit of cutoff. So this is different than just, having an opinion, right? Our opinions are harmful in our circles, and, they touch. But when you wield political and financial power and you think like this, it has an impact. And in 2021, honestly, could Detroit ever really make a comeback? And in this article, Jack Lessenberry talked about how most of the neighborhoods are dilapidated and there isn't really any real investment happening in the city. But hey, they do have a white mayor now, so maybe there's a possibility that there could be a future for Detroit. Okay, so now I'm taking you on this polite, pleasant journey of the city. Let's talk a little bit about disaster capitalism, surveillance capitalism, and racial capitalism. I don't know if you all have ever heard of Voltron. I'm showing my age now, but it was like this cartoon that have all these pieces that would come together to form like this giant. Well, that has happened in Detroit with disaster capitalism, surveillance capitalism, racial capitalism. They're like this mighty force that seem to unite and make decisions about the city. And so here is an example. This red map here is a map of all the tax foreclosures that happened in the city of Detroit between 2002 and 2017. And so something to know is that later it was discovered that over $600 million was misallocated in tax foreclosures, and a lot of people lost their homes when they really didn't owe any money. The map next to it with the purple is from We the People of Detroit Research Collective, and that maps the water shutoffs. All the purple areas are water insecurity and water shutoffs over the same period, but this map is from specifically 2014. And so this map here, all the pink areas show you digital broadband, either in access or lack of access. And so you're looking at areas that don't have water, have been tax foreclosed unjustly, and young people are going without broadband internet access. And if you know anything about the pandemic and everybody just kind of thrown into Zoom and doing school online, we lost a lot of young people to that because they didn't have high speed internet. So what happens when government officials decide, hey, we have the solution to all those things I named, we're going to make a smart city? You get a panopticon. I don't know if you all know what a panopticon is, but that is an example of panopticon where they had in the prison system where you couldn't see the guard, but the guard was always watching. They could see everything that's happening around you, but you couldn't see who was watching. Bring us to Detroit. Project Greenlight. Not sure if you all are familiar with Project Greenlight, but you may have seen some flashing green lights. They stay on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're connected to what's called real-time crime centers that police officers monitor from these like Batman hubs, right? Like looking over the city. It started with Dan Gilbert, a billionaire investor in the city, which he had his own surveillance hub that monitors downtown. And then police officers said, we want one. And so they built one for the rest of the city. And all of these green dots are where those surveillance cameras that are monitored and attached to facial recognition technology are around the city. So what does that mean for a city who has a median household income under $40,000 per year, has mass water shutoffs, inaccess to broadband, tax foreclosures, and mass surveillance? You see an overlap of disparity. You see quality of life resources that have been extracted replaced with mass surveillance. So if you have a city that has heightened crime and is lacking resources and you respond to it with mass surveillance, then you're not going to get a solution. You're going to get further incarceration. You're going to get something else I'll talk about in a few moments. And so I'll wrap it up, all of that, and talk to you about how those human cognitive biases that were created over decades of media and images and music, et cetera, for a half century, how that turns into designing systems that are harmful. And so a human cognitive bias is how we relate to individuals or groups, how we perceive AI information, and how we make decisions to fill in that information. It's also how humans think about purposes and functions of AI systems. And so if you're biased against a community and you're thinking that they should be contained, despite all those other resources that should go into that community, you're going to make a decision about digital technologies, algorithmic systems, artificial intelligence that do not respond to the crises that those communities face. And what happens in that instance is you end up with this. Right now, Detroit holds the largest percentage of misidentification cases using artificial intelligence, facial recognition in the country. Wow. So these are just a few examples. Lamia Robinson, she's not a Detroiter. She lives in a suburb, I believe it was Inkster. And I'll tell you what happened with her is she went roller skating. And at the time, during the height of the pandemic, when they were taking everybody's temperatures, she didn't know that that temperature monitor was scanning her face. Well, they just identified her with another child that they said had a fight earlier in the year. And it was 9 o'clock at night. Her parents, she's 14 years old. Her parents had dropped her off at the skating rink for a skate park. They put her outside. She had no cell phone. They put her outside the establishment. And she basically had to fend for herself until the skating party was over. Robert Williams, at the time that I started really organizing publicly about, I've been doing this data justice work for over a decade, But by the time I started really digging into thinking, it's thankless work. No. Started to really talk about facial recognition, Robert was the only case that we knew about at the time. He has since sued the city and got a settlement, but he was misidentified for stealing watches out of Shinola. He didn't live in the city. He had never been to Shinola. They used the old ID, matched it up with someone that wasn't him. When he said it's not me, they said, well, the computer said it's you. So that's all that matters. He was arrested in front of his two small children and taken to jail. He suffered a stroke later, all the stress after that. His kids are still in therapy. So it's had a drastic impact on his life. Michael Oliver was arrested for stealing a cell phone. He was not the person who stole the cell phone and broke the cell phone. They used facial recognition technology to accuse him of that. LaDonna Crutchfield's a newer case. They accused her of a shooting that she was not involved in, misidentified, incarcerated her. Oh, I should say that Michael Oliver lost his home, his job, his car was repossessed all during that time that he was incarcerated. Portia Woodruff was 8 months pregnant. They came to her house and said that she carjacked someone. And she said, did they say the person was 8 months pregnant that did this? And they said, well, it doesn't matter. The technology said it's you. And so that's what happens when you have a human cognitive bias. It's been defined by pervasive dominant negative narratives for decades. And then you get a technology as the solution and you apply it without any consideration for what might be the real situation. So I'll finally say, I don't know how much time I think okay, really quick. So another technology that is used here is license plate readers, indiscriminately. You'll notice that a journalist, Malachi Barrett, he talked about how license plate readers in Detroit over a 90-day period, they read 25 million license plates. That means everybody who was coming in and out of the city for any reason was under surveillance. And of the 45,314 matches of plates connected to investigations, 64 arrests. So 25 million people went under a perpetual lineup to lead to 64 arrests. So that means every single person was surveilled. And these are just some other examples. There was an admittance by the former chief of police that the software misidentifies 96% of the time, but hey, they had an analyst who catch that, millions of dollars. We have drones, we have shot spotter technology. We now have Michigan Central, which is collecting a tremendous amount of data, but they have a massive, beautiful PR campaign that will never let you interrogate that fully. And so these are some of the issues that we're experiencing in the city. And so beyond Detroit, when you're not thinking of cognitive biases and you're just applying this technology indiscriminately, you come across these other issues. Google tagged 2 African Americans as gorillas through facial recognition. Facebook was promoting one particular type of college to Black students versus white students. AI is more likely to indicate breast cancer wrongly in Black women, and pulse oximeters misread for darker skin tones at the doctor. And so how do we center racial equity, right? One of the tools that I helped create is a toolkit for centering racial equity throughout data integration. These are 2 definitions of racial equity. One is from our first toolkit. We've since adopted the racial equity definition through Race Forward. These are available free resources online. You can download toolkits. They are not just for governmental agencies, they're for anybody who's using data and applying data in communities. And so I just want you to think a little bit about like how important it is to center racial equity, to think about cognitive biases and to not use these technologies indiscriminately. Railroads, right? On the surface, beautiful idea, build them, wonderful. We know that a lot of neighborhoods were displaced and had them ran through those communities. It's the same way with data infrastructure. If we're not thinking about data infrastructure and we're letting these technologies be built upon communities without thinking about racial discrimination and bias, we're going to end up replicating that with data infrastructure. And so we can move from a looping cycle of just injustice to a path towards justice if we center racial equity and think about how artificial intelligence systems, I like to call them algorithmic systems, because it's not just AI, right? It's any digital system that's applied, whether it's in the medical industry or in school, or to get a job, or try to get a job, et cetera. If you're not thinking about these things, if you're not thinking about why that became the solution and which communities are going to be affected by those technologies, you're going to have a looping cycle of injustice, and we don't want to do that. We want to move towards justice. Then finally, really quickly, I will go through a lot of resources, and I'm here available to tell you more about those. But these are some things that there is an article you can download like ASAP for free that I created called Interrogating Detroit's Innovative Future. It takes you through the history that I defined, as well as many other examples. That's on Shift Space 5.0. The Digital Defense Playbook, I co-authored this with our data bodies. It has community tools where you can have these conversations in your community. I created a Simple Tech curriculum with Una Lee. This is another toolkit that you can download. You can do these workshops in your community. I have flyers for the book that I'm part of, Resisting Borders and Technologies of Violence. That's another book. Centering Racial Equity. These are two downloadable resources. You can get both of them online, 1 and 2. I'm in a new book called AI in Assembly. It's talking about how we organize around a system that is discriminating algorithmically. Oh, sometimes. I don't lift up governmental resources often. However, I have to name that there were 2 under the previous administration. Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework that has the human cognitive biases defined in it, as well as statistical and computational biases and how you can mitigate them. There was also a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights that had these 5 principles that we're encouraging everyone to think about when you're using data systems, algorithmic systems, any AI system. Data capitalism, downloadable with data for Black lives. I'm almost finished, y'all. Detroit, I Do Mind Dying, some Detroit resources. This is my favorite book, Studying Urban Revolution. It talks about the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement and all that organizing, this is the way we're going to have thinking as we move into the future of this AI society, because they're trying to pursue artificial general intelligence, which doesn't see many of us still being in existence at the end of it. Redlining, Before Redlining and Beyond. This is Alex B. Hill. This is also downloadable. Mapping the Water Crisis. I'm sorry, that map that I show on a water crisis is in this. A People's Atlas of Detroit. This is also an easy, accessible resource. Ruha Benjamin's Race After Technology and Viral Justice. Automating Inequality, How High-Tech Tools Profile Police Punish the Poor, Virginia Eubanks. She was a partner with me on our data bodies. The AI Con, this is a new book. You really want this one because it talks about ChatGPT and all the other large language models that everyone's kind of funneling data into right now, which, just to ask ChatGPT a question, it takes a bottle of water. Bottle worth of water. Yeah, just to ask a question from ChatGPT, it uses about a bottle worth of water. Just a question. Empire AI, the newest book from Karen Howe. She's done a lot of accessible journalism online that you can find around AI. And then Dark Matters on the Surveillance of Blackness. I'll finally say, when you think about Project Greenlight in Detroit, think about the 18th century lantern laws, which are covered in this book. And the 18th century lanterns law, where if you were not in the presence of a white person in New York, you had to have a lit candle lantern in front of your face. And so when we see Project Greenlight in the city of Detroit, it's similar. Research has shown that gentrifying neighborhoods tend to heighten pervasive surveillance and make it visible so that you know that that community is being watched. Finally, I have a book called Towards Humanity, Shifting the Culture of Anti-Racism Organizing. And then I want to say thank you.
Oh, wow, yes, give it up to Tawana Petty. Yes. All right. And please state your questions at the end. And we have two more presenters kicking us off so strong. So it is now my honor to introduce Andrea Reyes with Tectonic Justice. Andrea Reyes Sierra is a proud Latina from El Paso, Texas. And C.D. Juarez, Chihuahua, her bicultural upbringing and lived experience as a daughter of immigrants shaped her deep commitment to justice and power building in marginalized communities. She holds a degree in international politics from the University of Texas at El Paso and a foreign exchange certificate in international law from Corvinus University in Budapest. Her exposure to authoritarianism abroad and racial injustice in the United States propelled her into the progressive movement 10 years ago. And since then, she has furthered her exposure into organizing and deepened her belief in grassroots power and strategic advocacy to drive systemic change through working various political campaigns and 5 legislative sessions. During the 2024 presidential elections, Andrea served as a state advisor with Way to Win, a donor advising hub where she guided national funding strategies focused on building long-term political power in the South, particularly in Florida, Texas, and Louisiana. Her work supported frontline multi-entity organizations leading transformative change through grassroots mobilization, narrative change, leadership development, and political organizing. Prior to her role at Tectonic Justice, she served as executive director at Deeds Not Words, a Texas statewide organization working to galvanize the power of young people through artistic expression, holistic organizing, intersectional policy advocacy, and civic engagement. Through her leadership, the organization built and maintained lasting statewide infrastructure to train and resource young changemakers to shape the local and state policies that would most affect their generation, successfully passing 29 gender and racial equity bills into law. Andrea believes sustainable change starts with community-driven solutions and the investment in the leadership of those most impacted, primarily Indigenous, BIPOC women, youth, trans, and non-binary organizers. Outside of work, she finds inspiration through artistic expression and traveling with her life partner, always seeking to fuel her continued work toward equity and liberation. Let's give it up for Andrea.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever heard a bio like that for myself. Yeah, as my bio stated, I am from neither here nor there, but both. I come from a long line of medical professionals and activists, ultimately tracing the same desires into my own trajectory. I was an activist and an organizer like many of us without knowing it from the start. I was just very passionate and liked to shake things up. But I formally did come into the organizing profession in social justice around 10 years ago, specifically when there was a bill called the Show Me Your Papers Act that was being modeled after Arizona's Show Me Your Paper Act during the time that I was still in school. So basically it would allow peace officers to ask for documentation of your citizenship at your universities. And so coming from a binational state, specifically from El Paso, which is shared the border, it was a very impactful bill that was going to affect not only myself, but all of the people that I loved. With that, like I said, I come from a state that is very authoritarian. It is a state that raised me. It's the state that hates me. And it's oftentimes the state that acts as a breeding ground for policy that is then replicated across the nation. It's a lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now, too. My experience overall organizing in the South is what I'm hoping to bring to Tectonic Justice as the senior organizing strategist for the organization. So, how did we get here? You said go down. I knew it. So the story of us. So we were founded by Kevin DeLebon, who is a legal aid attorney, and he faced his first algorithmic decision-related battle that involved Arkansas's Medicaid program, providing in-home caregiving services to disabled people who would otherwise have to live in nursing facilities. But the Arkansas State Department replaced nurses' professional judgment with an algorithm-based system for determining home care eligibility. What caused this is that people, primarily people with disabilities, then faced drastic cuts to their benefits, leading to disastrous impacts in their health and dignity. In order to fight back, there needed to be a multidisciplinary approach of community organizing with legal action. Eventually, that pressure from the community as well as the attorneys at Legal Aid solidified a victory, which was one of the first worldwide against government use of AI, and laid the roadmap for the work that we're doing here at Tectonic now. So our mission and vision is to build the collective power to resist ground level harms that AI algorithms or algorithmic decision models and related technologies inflict on low income people nationwide by supporting, coalescing, and catalyzing local justice movements, including frontline advocates and affected communities to then litigate, educate, and organize. We do this through training legal aid providers and other frontline advocates and directly impacted people to be able to identify, investigate, and then fight AI that harms access to work, housing, public benefits, school, and then safety, overall safety. Our primary goal is really twofold. First, we're focused on direct harm reduction, making sure that people who are most affected can survive the immediate threats that they are facing through litigation. Second, we're actually working to build community power. And as Tawana had mentioned, it is so important to be able to organize in your community for long-term lasting political change. So, and that way we can win lasting protections and maybe prevent harm before it even happens. Right now, there are none or very, very few state or nationwide organizations that focus on supporting low-income communities and their advocates to fight immediate AI-related harms in housing, work, government benefits, K-12 education, child welfare, and domestic violence. Most groups in this space that do very important work, they do it around research and political advocacy, but they don't always have a strong connection with grassroots groups or with the people that are directly affected. On the flip side, the few organizations who do a grassroots approach, they tend to tackle these issues through attacking corporate power, surveillance, and policing issues, which are also very important. And we have to work with them as well to be able to affect change in general. Our approach, though, helps fill that gap. We reduce that overlap in the ecosystem and then open up new opportunities for real collaboration and then shared learning across groups. So why now? Well, I don't know that I have to go into what is AI. I feel like you guys got it, right? Okay, great. So you might be asking yourselves right now, AI is already reshaping almost every part of our lives, whether we realize it or not. For most of you, prior to Tawana's presentation, you were probably introduced to the concept of AI through conversations about an automation replacing jobs, or AI making it easy to create convincing fake content through deepfakes that then lead to misinformation and disinformation. Or most recently, you've probably seen this administration weaponize facial recognition software and AI to hunt and track down undocumented people, and oftentimes citizens whom it determines illegal. Unfortunately, though, I do have news for y'all. AI is a lot more prolific than we care to realize. And right now is a critical moment to take stock and correct course before AI and any other form of technology actually becomes so entrenched as a legitimate way to make decisions about people that the society is already marginalizing. Right now, governments and corporations actually utilize AI to make important decisions about massive amounts of people, from who receives public benefits like SNAP or unemployment to shaping your child's educational futures or your housing costs. That's also beside considering the devastational effects that these technologies cause in our environment. As Tawana mentioned, it does take one bottle of water to power a chat GPT inquiry, but database centers or data centers in general require a lot of not only water, but also cause devastating healthcare harms to low-income people in marginalized communities that are usually centered around where data centers are actually being built. But for the sake of time, I'm actually going to just focus on one example, and I'll focus on education, and then I'll go over how much it impacts every other aspect. In education, about 13.5 million low-income children across the US are actually exposed to AI-related decision-making through a school district's use of AI to determine grading, behavior monitoring, and predicting dropout rates. Not only do these AI models overly target Black and Brown or communities and students with disabilities or ESL students at a much higher rate than their counterparts, but also depending on data sharing agreements between the school districts and the Department of Justice or police forces, these students actually get labeled as potential criminals and have higher contact rates with police force, and that is oftentimes unprovoked. There was a case study that we followed alongside this coalition called the Notice Coalition, which focuses primarily on education and surveillance, that happened in Florida, where the Pasco Sheriff's Office was actually employed an AI tool that incorporated educational risk factors that were provided by school districts and the AI tools that the school districts were using, and criminogenic factors that are oftentimes based on racial stereotypes. Other things that were included in that were adverse childhood trauma, such as witnessing or experienced violence or substance disorder. And so when they did that, they actually used it to determine likely criminals. And with this tool, they tracked around 18,000 children and labeled 420 of them actual criminals. And in the following days, those people that were determined, those 420 young people, were actually experiencing harassment by the sheriff's police department officers. They would oftentimes cite them tickets for really harmless reasons, such as like overgrown grass, or conducting just randomized frequent searches at their homes of these students' friends and their relatives as well. Really just solidifying that like school to prison pipeline. Where was this? This was in Pasco, Florida. Yes. And y'all can find it also on the news and everything. But this is actually a big layout of how many people we estimate are actually being impacted across all of our issue areas. So in Medicaid, we can estimate around 73 million low-income people that are exposed to AI-related decision-making in Medicaid through the eligibility and enrollment process. Now that there have been Medicaid cutbacks because of the reconciliation bill, we can expect this to be even worse. Other things are also the SNAP program. We can estimate 42 million people being affected by it. Social Security, disability. I won't go into all of it, especially if you guys already took a picture. You can also find this on our website. So yes, under public benefits, some of the ways in which the AI is used to determine is through eligibility determination, through allocation, the asset or the income limit enforcement, fraud detection, identity verification, and chatbots. We are also expecting that soon it'll also impact hearing decisions. So when it comes to housing, it is used to screen for tenants. It is used to set rents. It's also used for surveillance of purposes of lease enforcement or eviction as well. I really do want y'all to understand that like there is a really big racial justice like segment to this, where mostly Black and Brown people are the most affected and under this, as well as people with disabilities and people that speak more than one language. Under employment, it is used to hire workers, setting wages. This is what people are most familiar with. And whenever there's a conversation about AI taking our jobs, this is usually what's happening. There is some aspects of surveillance and managing, and then also electronic visit verifications. Under child welfare, it also is used to investigate neglect allegations and maltreatment registries, which then can be used to inform other aspects of, like the school district or the education example that I shared. Under language access, there is, I don't know how many of y'all speak other languages, but I can tell you as a native Spanish speaker, it does not translate things well. And it is also oftentimes used for automated translation and interpretation, which is also affecting people that have any form of hearing lack of accessibility. When it comes to domestic violence, it is used to assess risk of violence and eligibility for services in general. It's also used as deepfakes as coercion and deepfakes as evidence. I can speak from experience working in Texas that one of those 29 bills that we used was actually one of the bills that we passed was actually relating to deepfakes specifically, because there were some cases of people utilizing deepfakes to create pornography and utilize it in against the people in cases and stuff, and then utilizing it then for retribution later on, and making sure when it comes to domestic violence cases to keep them oppressed. So, but that is a bill that we passed, so let's stop doing so. In K through 12 education, it, like I had mentioned before, it predicts dropouts, it predicts criminals, and there's a lot of surveillance. I don't know if there's teachers also in the room, but maybe you could speak to it, but every school district now actually has some form of AI integrated in the learning or in the curriculum that teachers are also giving and stuff, and the way and the tools that they utilize for that, which is also tracking a lot of other things depending on the vendor that they go through. Overall, there are a couple of bigger issues with AI, and the fact that it really defies existing accountability structures. The reason that the case in Arkansas was so impactful is that because of the multidimensional strategy that was utilized, they were able to target the political issue, the market issue, and then the legal issue all at once, which is why our model is so unique and why we want to be able to help all of our advocates be able to utilize it as well. There are a couple of political advocacy challenges, and I am not a lawyer, so I will not be giving legal advice as to why or how we do certain things, but we do have lawyers on our staff, so if you guys ever have any form of interaction with AI, we are here to help determine some of that, some of these questions right here. So why us? How much time? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So why us? I've already talked about how we are approaching this by integrating direct services with systemic organizing work. I hope I've made it pretty clear that AI isn't just a tech issue, whether it is that you're concerned about your job, your rights, or the future of your children. AI is already part of that story. And paying attention now means having a say in how it actually unfolds. Because directly impacted people, providers, and local advocacy groups oftentimes see, hear, or experience firsthand injustices, they can actually be trained to identify when and where AI is being irresponsibly used and broadly how to respond. Through our work, we will ensure that low-income people and their direct advocates are better able to identify, understand, strategize, and then implement those multidimensional strategies to fight back AI-related harms in all of the key aspects of life. Through this, we hope that we can foster increased public understanding about the ground level harms, but then also because of it, then low-income people and their direct advocates will then participate more effectively in AI policy discourse, as reflected in media, stakeholder convenings, and government proceedings. I really want to stress that everybody in this room actually does have a lot more power than they might think. And we can, if we do this collectively and together, we can actually fight back. My role at the organization is to determine that strategic plan as it relates to organizing by intentionally building a broad base of people, determining the geographic areas to initially focus on, whether it be proactive or defensive, because every state is different and there has to be different strategies for different states. And then the last part is building that broad coalition of allied organizations, whether they are actually tech-related organizations, tech-curious organizations, or have nothing to do with tech, but have people that are impacted by AI decision-making models. And this is the only way that we'll actually be able to win the future that we deserve. So, yeah, I think that's it. And if you, feel free to take down our emails, and if you have any questions on how to determine AI.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Andrea. What a great presentation. All right, we will have time at the end for Q&A, so hold your questions until then. In the meantime, I am now so excited to introduce our third speaker. So we have on our Zoom here, we have Jalal Abu Khater, who is a Palestinian human rights advocate based in Jerusalem. He is the advocacy manager at Humla, the Arab Center for the Advancement of Social Media, where he works to promote Palestinian digital rights and ensure a free, fair, and safe digital space for all Palestinians. Jalal holds a Master in Diplomacy from the University of Malta and an MA in Politics and International Relations from the University of Dundee. Prior to that, he had completed his education at the Ramallah Friends School in the West Bank. Earning an international baccalaureate diploma in 2012. Jalal is an avid fan of humanist literature and is a dedicated athlete. He has been a member and community leader and trainer with Right to Movement, a Palestinian group based in several cities, Haifa, Jaffa, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Ramallah, who organize weekly runs and strength workout sessions, as well as seasonal hiking and camping activities. So with that, I will pass it over to our speaker, Jalal, to share his slides and share about the amazing work they do at Humla. All right, so Jalal, you can try unmuting yourself and seeing if this works. Okay.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Can you all hear that?
Hi, is it audible?
All
Let me
right.
know which tone to settle on.
It's getting better.
Okay.
Still not there? Okay. All
Okay.
right. How about now?
Trying now. Is it
Perfect. Okay, great. Okay.
excellent? So, first of all, thank you a lot, Jessica, for the introduction. Thank you for having me. I won't be sharing slides myself. I'll be speaking more to you today. I hope that's okay, but I thought with everything happening all the time, there's just so much escalations that sometimes I feel like it's better to just tell what it's like to be living here in Jerusalem and what kind of work we do. And that could be a better way to get a better grasp and understanding of the situation that we're talking about. I was listening earlier to other previous speakers, especially Twana Petty speaking on Detroit, and I thought there were so many similarities. The thing is, where we live in Palestine, I live basically myself in occupied East Jerusalem. As you mentioned, I went to school in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. The Friends School is a Quaker school in Ramallah, over 100 years old school actually. And my life has always been, you know, between places that are considered to be Israel, Palestine. But at the same time, I lived in a place where I became aware of the politics and the realities very early on, like any Palestinian growing up in this place. And of course, eventually we reached the understanding that we were living in a situation of apartheid. Not only is it like a military occupation that controls people's lives controls resources, illegal in its nature, according to recent decisions from the International Court of Justice. But living under a situation of apartheid means that there has to be a system built in a way that can control and dominate millions of people under the authority of Israel as an occupier state. And all those people are managed under this system of apartheid, of control and domination. And surveillance is one of the most important tools for such a system. I can recall exactly how the architecture around me in Jerusalem changed over the years. I'm talking about specific architecture that have to do with settler colonial expansion, control of a population under occupation, not only in the presence of occupation soldiers on the corners and them building more outposts and controlling our movement with checkpoints, but also the fact that our neighborhoods in Jerusalem are specifically, something that you will never miss if you come visit, is that there are so many surveillance cameras, big towers installed at every corner, every public space that we use in Jerusalem. And the thing is, if you come to Jerusalem, that you will notice this kind of heavy presence of surveillance technologies of various kinds is only present in the spaces that we Palestinian Jerusalemites occupy, in our public spaces. If you go to a public space that's used mostly by Jewish Israeli citizens, you wouldn't find such surveillance systems and cameras, because there are laws that protect Israeli citizens and protect their right to privacy and their data. And there are very strict laws against the use of facial recognition technologies targeting Israeli citizens. However, myself, I'm not a citizen, but even if a Palestinian citizen of Israel is treated according to a different system, because in this system of apartheid, there are many tiers, and we don't get the protections that other citizens have under this system. I'm talking from a privileged position because I live in Jerusalem, which is under total Israeli occupation control. It's been annexed since the 1980s, and technically I'm under civilian control and not directly under a military control. However, if you go to the West Bank, crossing between Jerusalem and the West Bank, it's a natural extension. It's suburbs and cities that are always connected. But suddenly there are checkpoints that block our movements. Those checkpoints are heavily militarized. Not only are there big, tall towers and long concrete walls separating neighborhoods and separating families from each other, but there are many systems of cameras on those checkpoints. They're always collecting data on who is crossing when. There are the license plate readers, there are facial recognition technology cameras, there are cameras that are developed to detect the shape of a car. So multiple cameras that we have to go through, including the soldier who asks for ID and would eventually let us pass or not pass. In the occupied West Bank, this system of surveillance has been advancing to a level that now there are people who need to go through a checkpoint, like in the city of Hebron, for example. They need to go through a checkpoint to get to their house or to get to the supermarket or to school. And those checkpoints are now fitted with artificial intelligence supported systems where the person approaching may be identified before they even approach the checkpoint, and they would receive a light if they're allowed to pass or not pass to go to their home. This is a city where the occupation is so clear, apartheid is so clear, that there is so much segregation right there, right in front of you. And it's so obvious that it's based on racial segregation. However, the dimension of the surveillance cameras and the artificial intelligence supported checkpoint systems, it makes it, a very scary reality that we actually live through. Not only that, but they've also installed semi-autonomous guns. A company called Smart Shooter, an Israeli company called Smart Shooter, has developed those autonomous, semi-autonomous guns that you also see on those checkpoints in Hebron and elsewhere in the West Bank. And those guns are able to identify a target, lock in a target, and even shoot a person. That kind of technology has been seen a lot also in Gaza. Indiscriminate killings are the result of those semi-autonomous guns making their own decisions through an algorithm or through an AI system. But just to stay with the West Bank for a minute, we're talking about a reality that is like a laboratory that we live in. We know that there are so many Israeli companies that are investing and developing surveillance systems, spyware technologies that are so advanced, systems of control, like the systems of the panopticon, to make you feel like you're always being controlled so that you have fear to even interact with the system, to even voice your protest or go to, express your outrage at the occupation. Those systems are designed in a way to keep us in control. And eventually what happens is that Israeli companies are promoting those systems to other countries. They're trying to sell them. They're trying to make, a profit of technologies that have been tested and trialed on us, a Palestinian population that are living under a system of injustice, of occupation, of apartheid. And unfortunately, what we're looking at today is genocide in Gaza. So we are talking about a system that's been developed over years, where there's a database of all the Palestinians controlled by Israeli occupation authorities. And this database includes all our data, our voice samples, our biometric information. We are always face to face with soldiers who ask us to take off our glasses and to take a picture of our face so that this picture would go to this system, that this person was stopped at this point, and this system would track this person's entire behavior. And we are meant to feel that we're always watched, that every checkpoint, they know what we're doing, where we were, who we speak to, who we have relations with. They want to instill this fear in people so that people are feeling suppressed, that people are self-censoring themselves and withdrawing from engaging in politics or expressing outrage and protest. This is happening in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. This is a reality that I live through, and I know those systems are being promoted elsewhere, and they might find themselves eventually in the States. I'm sure you know of the company Palantir. Palantir has had a long history working with the Israeli occupation in developing systems where they can build a huge database of all the Palestinians under Israeli control. The systems, of course, include so much data and information collected through illegal surveillance, including through drones and through tapping our phone calls and through spyware on our devices. This kind of system is meant to manage the population. The most horrifying use of such a system is in the genocide in Gaza. So we know that those systems exist, but we haven't seen them applied at such a mass scale, causing so much mass indiscriminate killings of civilians as we are seeing in Gaza. Since the start of the genocidal war against Gaza, we have seen how there have been new systems put in the field, tested by the Israeli military. The systems, as they proclaimed, the intelligence officers who spoke of those systems, are meant to increase the efficiency of the Israeli army, increasing the efficiency in creating targets and destroying and killing people. There are some really diabolical names of some of those systems, including the Gospel and one called Where's Daddy? The system called Where's Daddy is one that is basically meant to track an individual through different AI systems and through surveillance techniques. And when the individual enters their home, that's when the system makes the alert that the person is home, you can target now. And that has been done many times over the past 2 years in Gaza, where people have been killed once they entered their home, meaning that their entire family would be killed along with that one supposed target. That system is an AI-developed system that increases the efficiency for Israeli officers to make the decision that this bombing should happen. When we talk about killing becoming efficient, we're looking at a dystopian, horrifying reality that this cannot be normalized. We're not just talking about what potential dangers AI could have. We're already seeing how AI has been weaponized to create this mass indiscriminate targeting and killings. And it's continuing to be weaponized to keep a whole population in check, under control. Not that AI systems are independent of human action, but those systems are just removing more and more of the human barriers that could have prevented someone from issuing a targeting of a house that would kill multiple children, for example. If the Israeli military would rely more on those AI systems, they're causing more and more and more indiscriminate killing. Perhaps that's the intention. But the idea is that such a reality is not just restricted to what's happening in Palestine, but we are seeing the actual effects of it. A few weeks ago, an Israeli weapons manufacturer company called Rafael was promoting its drones, with autonomous drones, which are also fed and built with AI systems. It's promoting its drones in using footage of actual targeting of an unarmed civilian in Gaza, saying this is Rafael systems, this is how the drone operates, and that's how it targets its target. There are definitely many, horrible repercussions of using such advanced technologies to and weaponizing them to keep a population under control, under check, and to make genocide more efficient. But what we are seeing today for real is how a company like Palantir, which had history very early on developing huge databases of the Palestinian people, now becoming so close to the White House in the United States. And don't be surprised if at some point within a few years, government services, public services, healthcare are actually going through data through companies like Palantir, companies which are very public in that they are relying on social scoring, relying on who is deemed to be suitable to receive benefits, or who is deemed to be suitable for this medical insurance policy, for example. When we are, utilizing massive databases of information over people collected through often illegal means, this massive database of everything that we speak about, the people we interact with, the life that we go through, it's creating a really, horrible place. And we know the impact of this very clearly in Palestine. People who are under the impression that they're always being surveilled and that everything they say is monitored and they could face huge consequence for it, people decide to self-censor. They withdraw from the public space. They lose out on their creativity. They don't produce art. They don't make, and they don't participate. This causes more harm on an individual's, mentality, individual's level. They deny us of so many opportunities because we're feeling that, we're always needing to rush to work or to school. We spend and waste so many hours on checkpoints, but at the same time, those checkpoints which are controlling our lives are also making us feel we're watching you. Someone like me who lives in Jerusalem, I'm always concerned that those cameras, which are always used to track my behavior, my movement patterns, might be used anytime to pressure me, because technically, according to Israeli law, if I live anywhere outside of the borders of East Jerusalem, then I might be liable to lose my residency in Jerusalem, even though my family goes back to many years before Israel was even established in the city of Jerusalem. But I am put under this pressure that I have to keep proving my presence in Jerusalem. And if I miss out on proving this through participation in society, which they want to make me feel like they're always watching me, then I might lose my status as a resident in my own city. I don't have any other passport. I don't have anywhere else to go. But this is the purpose of those systems. They want us to keep us in check. They want us to not speak up. We're facing the most horrifying, grotesque, genocidal violence we've ever witnessed in our lives. We never thought this would be imaginable. But can you imagine the level of despair that people are also feeling when they're under so much pressure, under so much control, because our movement is restricted heavily. The surveillance systems that have been established in the West Bank are designed in a way to violate our right to free expression, violate our right to privacy, violate our right to movement, our right to safety, violate our economic rights of all sorts. There are many ways that this system Israel has built has been used to put us back, to cause the development of Palestinian society, to make people more concerned and busy about, daily affairs of like, how am I going to make ends meet before the end of this day, before the end of this month, but not actually confront or have the energy to confront those massive systems of surveillance that have been established. The worrying aspects of what's happening in Palestine, of course, as I repeat, it will find its way elsewhere. We already know of many governments which purchase Israeli spyware, Israeli surveillance systems to repress their own people. Anti-democratic forces are relying on spyware developed by Israeli companies to topple or to, basically remove the threat of opposition, to fake election result, etc. We already see so much disinformation that is used to delegitimize actual campaigns of humanitarian aid, for example. We have seen how disinformation has been used to exacerbate ethnic violence in other regions, in Ethiopia, in Myanmar, and elsewhere. So those who control information and control data have so much power over us that we don't even realize how dangerous it could be. That's why there's a collective sense of responsibility. We all have to be responsible, that emerging technologies have to always be aligned with basic principles of human rights. Emerging technologies have to keep in mind that our opposition to the mass deployment of AI technologies today is not coming from a place that we reject technology and advancement. On the contrary, we want to advance society. We want to advance the well-being and the quality of life of people. However, we do not want to see those technologies used to suppress and oppress, ethnically cleanse, cause indiscriminate killing at such a mass scale. It's a very scary time to be witnessing how things in Palestine are already flowing across outside of the borders. But I think the lesson is very clear. What is happening here, and any case of injustice somewhere, is injustice everywhere. And that's why I'm really happy to be speaking to you all. I'm happy to be delivering a voice from Palestine, from a place that's facing a horror that's been unimaginable, to be honest. People dying of starvation. I don't even start to speak about how horrible that feels. But there are so many intricate levels of this system that's in place, used to control and dominate. Solidarity, collective action, collective work. That's how we get towards a more just place in this environment. We don't want despair to the darkness. We don't give in. We stay positive. We stay hopeful that we can actually make things improve in the foreseeable future. Thank you all for your time. I'm happy to be speaking to you all, and also happy to receive any questions at a later stage.